Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation.
And that's exactly what I do. Once a day in the morning, pretty big deal of the day. Hair gel comes from. Yeah. Save America. And welcome back to the Philosophy Podcast, joined by the man who leads the Bergen Catholic Crusaders on the basketball court and off. He's also the owner of Hoop Dreamz, Coach Billy Armstrong. Coach, welcome on to the podcast. So happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You know, Coach, when we first did our thing, we had the three football coaches on, and we saw you retweeted the podcast. I'm like, oh my God, we got to get him on. So shout out to my friend Noel Naughton, who put me in contact with you. And
Noel's the best. So one of my teammates, classmates, he's a great guy.
So speaking about what you guys have accomplished at Bergen Catholic on the basketball court, I know me and you, we had a phone call about 2 weeks ago. We talked more about a whole bunch of other stuff that goes back into it. But first, I want to start off with you and how you got started with basketball. From what I'm told from a lot of people is your work ethic was insane when you were a kid, that you actually wore goggles when you were in grammar school on the basketball court. People told me. And then in 9th and 10th grade, you grew a little bit taller, and you had an unbelievable work ethic that got you to become a D1 basketball player. And then with you guys, then I have it right here. Let me just pull up the stats. You only played 2 years varsity basketball, and you guys went 50-5.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
So, Coach, explain to me the work ethic. And is it true that you used to dribble a basketball on the grass?
Yeah. So I grew up in Hillsdale, and I went to St. John's, and I was like a pretty decent player there. And then I did wear goggles up until, I can't remember now, 6th or 7th grade. No, maybe even, I think 6th or 7th grade. Left-handed, so I was all left-handed. I had no right hand. And I was pretty good for that town and for that team. And then I get to Bergen Catholic, and I was fortunate enough. I think we had about 120 kids try out for the freshman team that year. I was fortunate enough to make it. Coach Donfield had taken 12 players, and I was probably like the 8th or 9th man on that freshman team. It was really after my freshman year that I just became obsessed with the game of basketball and just obsessed with getting better. When I say obsessed, it was really to the point of my mom and dad, really my mom, she thought I had psychological problems. She thought I was completely crazy because I'd be doing defensive slides in my driveway at like 1 o'clock in the morning, holding bricks in my hands and stuff like that. So I don't really know where their work ethic came. I just really became obsessed with just wanting to become as good as I possibly can. I think Bergen Catholic had a lot to do with it. We had some upperclassmen that were really good players that I looked up to, players that got scholarships. So the goal was really never to get a scholarship. I just wanted to become as good as I possibly could. So I think I was 15 years old. It was that summer after my freshman year going into my sophomore year that pretty much nobody could find me that summer. None of my friends could find me. I would just train all day long. And then I would ride my bike from Hillsdale over to Ridgewood behind Valley Hospital. So it was a pretty long bike ride. And there's Ben Franklin Middle School was there. And that's where all the good pickup games were during that time when I was growing up. So I'd play there every day, Monday through Friday. So, and that's kind of really kind of where it all kind of got started, I guess. So I joke, but it's not actually a joke. I think I started like when I was 15, practicing and training every day. I don't think I took one day off until I was 25 years old.
Wow. When you look at the work ethic that you had back then, do you see that still with kids nowadays, or is it more of a lack of a work ethic?
I don't know if I would actually like make it generational, to be honest with you, from the standpoint of like, oh, my generation worked hard and this generation doesn't. I don't really think so. I still think it's the same as it was back then. I just think it was as it is now. I just think it's really the individual and what your motivation is, what your drive is. I mean, you could probably talk to a lot of NBA coaches, and they would tell you that Kobe Bryant's work ethic and drive was, a lot higher than most players on the Lakers team. So I really think it just individually, comes down to the person. I don't really know exactly where mine came from, other than the fact that I just, like I said, became obsessed, and I just wanted to get as good as I possibly can. And part of it is because I think once I got to Bergen, I wasn't the best kid, as I was the best player on the St. John's Hillsdale team, but I was not, even close to the best kid at Bergen Catholic. So having not experienced success my freshman year, I think really, really drove me.
When now you look at the start of your program of when you became the head coach, when you got that job offer, was it a no-brainer that that's where you wanted to go and that's what you were going to go do and go coach your alma mater?
It was funny actually because I started my Hoop Dreamz business first. I was done playing overseas and I started that, and then quite honestly, it was I never really had this goal or this dream of like being a high school coach. I was really just running my youth basketball business. I loved it. I coached, at the camps and the club teams we had and all of this stuff. And then it wasn't until an alum, Bergen Catholic alum, Zeke Rogers, who was a really good athlete at Bergen Catholic, called me and said there was an opening for the JV position. And I really wasn't that interested in taking it, to be honest with you. And he kind of talked me into going in and just, talking with the AD who at the time it was John Puzio, but then Jack McGovern was kind of the assistant AD. And when I met with Jack, I had a really good meeting and we talked a lot and kind of really started to get me to think like, this is something that could be exciting for me or whatever. So that's what kind of really started it. And then when I got in there, in the beginning, coaching the JV team, we did really well, but it was tough in the beginning and took away from my business and things like that. But after that first season of being the JV coach, I was really hooked at being back at Bergen Catholic and trying to do everything I can to help Coach Denicio and our program at the time, to kind of really get to the highest level it could.
What are the biggest speed bumps that became once you became the varsity head coach? Would you say that you've seen with building a program?
I mean, part of it is just really it has to do with where you start, So, and this isn't a knock on anybody at all. And the coach before me, Coach Denicio, was a really good coach and did a great job. And he had been coaching for many years, even prior to coaching at Bergen Catholic, whatever. So the one thing is that at this level, like it's 12 months out of the year job. Even though you're not necessarily coaching, like there's just a lot of conversations, so many things going on throughout the year with your players and stuff like that. So, but I never forget, like again, this isn't being disrespectful. It was just the facts. I remember I get the varsity job at Bergen Catholic, and I think the next day, the NJ.com had come out with like the top 50 basketball teams in the state of New Jersey, and I remember Bergen Catholic wasn't in the top 50 in the state of New Jersey. And I was just like, I kept going down the list and I'm just like, we got to be here somewhere. And then it was just like, we weren't there. And I was just, holy cow, like, what did I get myself into here? So I don't have a lot of time to kind of think back, and because I'm always trying to move on to the next thing. And I have current players that I'm trying to help, but I think we've been top 50 in the country the last 3 years or something like that. So from where we started to where we are now, it's just really, really awesome. And it's a huge supporting cast. It's definitely I've had so much help along the way on so many levels. So I think it's where you start to answer your initial question. You take an assessment of your program, and then obviously it's like, how are you going to build something that's special, that's going to attract the right players. And when I say the right players, it's the right player in terms of the talent combined with the character. Because if they don't have the character, it's not the right player for us, and it's not going to work. So try just really kind of where you start, and then trying to attract the right players.
When you talk about attracting the right players, I mean, you look at the Bergen Catholic alumni, especially this year during March Madness with Doug Eggert. How much of a draw does the success of the alumni help you guys with having kids want to come to Bergen Catholic to play basketball?
I think it helps us now quite a bit because I've actually had a bunch that have gone on and been successful. Not all of them have been as successful in terms of recognition, like Zach Fremantle, Xavier, and Doug Eddard in terms of St. Peter's. I have a bunch of other kids that have done really well at different levels. Justin and Sean Regis they play at Union College, and Gabe Stefanini was great at Columbia. Taj Benning was, Gabe went on to play at San Francisco this past year, and Taj at Fairfield. So the one thing I think that's really helped is that, and I don't take credit for this, I was really, really fortunate to go to Davidson College, play at Davidson, and I got the opportunity to just basically be engrossed in an environment that was run by a Hall of Fame coach in Bob McKillop. So I really I'm just kind of spoiled in that way. So because of that, I feel like I really was kind of educated in the game of basketball and how to run a program. So basically, the thing that's really helped now is with not necessarily the kids' success, like a Doug Edwards success, but that pretty much all of our kids that have played for us now have gone on and they didn't have to go through a typical freshman, sophomore experience that college kids go through. So we've had a really good track record. Most of our kids go on and they play right away as freshmen. Zach Fremantle was really good as a freshman, and a bunch of other guys. Doug started a bunch of games. So I think that has really, really helped attracting the kids, because the parents have kind of put two and two together and realized, like, my kid's going to be prepared for the next level.
When you talk about preparing kids, now a lot of people who go to a Bergen Catholic basketball game or who watch on TV, unlike a lot of coaches in the state, I always felt like that you're very misunderstood in a lot of things. I almost think about you as the John Calipari of New Jersey basketball.
Okay.
You look at the NBA coaches, they're very calm on the sideline. Granted, that's become a babysitting job almost at this point. And then you look in college and high school where coaches get more intense into the games and really get more involved. Granted, you only get some coaches that only do it for the last 2 minutes of a game. But how do you balance being hard on your players but still getting them to work for you?
No, it's a great question. The first thing about the NBA is that it's now like it's honestly, it's the way I want to coach. I wish I could do it that way. Hopefully one day I'll have a team, because ultimately at the end of the day, I really want to develop my players in practice so that I know it sounds funny, but if I didn't show up for the game, they'd be totally fine. Like, that's my goal every year. We've never gotten there yet, but I hope to get there. The NBA, it's a little bit different because you got Brad Stevens and these different guys, and they just kind of sit there. And it's because it's like their profession. So, for example, Steph Curry doesn't call Steve Kerr coach. He calls him Steve, because they're colleagues. It's a business. It's a job. You don't go out and get a job. And it does happen to a certain degree, but the guy who's in charge of your company is not ripping you every day, every time one thing is out of place or whatever. So I hope that would trickle down to college and high school, but it hasn't yet. Mainly because of the maturity factor, and we're coaching younger players and stuff. So we have a thing in our program, and we call it the power of and. It's A-N-D. And I think society as a whole puts a lot of limits on people. They put limits on kids. They put limits on adults. And it's always the either or. It's like you can do this or you can do that. You can have your cake, but you can't eat it too. So we really have this concept called the power of and, where it's, for example, I think Bergen Catholic, we chase championships and we don't define who we are based on the outcomes of those games. I think our coaches and our teachers hold kids accountable, and at the same time, we're compassionate. So I think sometimes the world thinks, like, if you're going to hold a kid accountable, you got to rip them, and you don't have to do that or whatever. So most of the stuff that you see me during the game, it's really just my personality and intensity coming out. Like, I really get into the game. I'm in like a defensive stance. If you really mic me up, most of the stuff is really cheerleading and just using my voice to get them to really just, motivate and play hard. And then the other part is really instructional. There's never, yelling like, "What are you doing, kid?" kind of thing, because that doesn't help anybody. So, but all the work is done before the game, and I've built the relationships, or I try to build the relationships, and we build it every single day with conversations, so that there is those moments where I have to get on a kid and really hold him accountable. He takes it the right way because he knows that I care and the relationship has been built. So I guess I'm getting older, because I'll get some younger coaches that will ask me advice. And one of the things I tell them, with this generation, you have to connect before you can correct. My generation was, you didn't have to tell me why. It's because my grandmother said so. That's why I'm doing it. It's because my coach said so. That's why I'm doing it. It's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. It's just knowing the kids that you're working with. This is a different generation. They have access to the internet. They have access to more knowledge, more information. Most kids today will say their mom or dad are one of their best friends. My dad was not my best friend. Like, my dad was my dad. Again, not right or wrong. It's just a different world. So you really got to connect with this generation. Once you connect with them, though, they're like any other generation that we've had before. They'll run through a wall for you. And that's been my experience. So I spend most of my time at Bergen Catholic trying to build truthful relationships with my players.
Do you ever feel that sometimes, as an intense coach, do refs ever take that out on you?
It's only been It's only been the last couple of years where I actually feel, I hope there's no refs listening, where I actually feel that Bergen Catholic and myself seem to get a little more calls than some of the other teams. And I think it's because I'm not the squeaky wheel. And you really got to kind of figure out like who you are and stuff. But there's that idea that like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So there's some coaches, as soon as the ball goes up, and I play against some of them, to be honest with you, they're just on the refs. Their assistants are on the refs from start to finish. And in my early years when maybe we weren't as successful, I felt like the yelling coach got more of the calls. And now it's really like flipped, I honestly feel like. I feel like and our team gets a lot more of the calls because the refs never hear from me. And maybe the other coaches are smarter than I am or something, but like I have a hard enough time coaching. Some of these guys are great at coaching and reffing. And I tell my players every year, what do you want to do? You want to coach, you want to ref, or you want to play? And I make them actually tell me, so they can't play and ref. So I think because I'm coaching my team and the refs know I'm coaching my team, they don't hear from me very often. And they even allow me, honestly, to maybe get a little further out on the floor than I'm really, really allowed to do. But it's because they know that it's about the kid and me coaching the team and not really them and stuff. So, I have to say that I think I haven't any issues with the refs, and I feel like we've kind of benefited from them. So we do a referee kind of team building workshop every year at the beginning of our season. So our parents and players come in after our first scrimmage. The refs that ref this scrimmage, they come in, and we just put them through an interview, and we ask them why they got into reffing, what they like about reffing, what they don't like about reffing, and they're really great. And it gives me the opportunity to let our parents and our players know that these guys are human beings too. So we treat people like human beings first.
So now, Coach, I want to go into your past year because right now we've covered a lot about you, but this year especially, I mean, your team had a tough beginning, tough kind of a season. You guys played against Bosco 2 times in the regular season and lost both those games. One of them at Bosco, which it's always hard in, I think, any not low level, but besides the NBA, but college and high school level to ever go into an opponent's building and try to win there. You look at it, college, everywhere kind of. But you lost at Bosco, and then they came into Bergen and beat you guys at Bergen. What was the switch that you're able to flip with your players that once the playoffs come around, those games just don't matter because then you see them 2 times in the playoffs, one in the Bergen County final, you win that, and then you see them again in the finals for the states, and you beat them again there. So what's that switch that you guys had to flip this season?
I think it was a couple things. One, it's always the guy in charge that has to change his attitude. So that was the first thing. I think sometimes as coaches, we look at like, they're not executing this, they're not doing this defense, they're not doing that, so on and so forth. And because that's the feeling that coaches have, and they watch film, and that after they watch film, that idea is reinforced to them. So now they come to practice, and it's all about the team and the kids, and you're getting on them, and so on and so forth. One of the things that we talk about all the time is that at the end of the day, I focus only on my effort and my attitude because that's all I have control over in life. It's those 2 things. But what happens is the coaches forgot to take their own medicine. So it's like we had 2 key injuries this year. Obviously, Elliot Cadeau is our point guard, phenomenal player, great player. He didn't play the entire season. Not only is like one of our best players, but he's also our point guard. It's like not having your starting quarterback the entire season. And then after about 9 or 10 games in, Terry Copeland, who's a starter for us and one of our best players, he gets hurt, and he's out 13, 14 games. So there's a combination of me changing my attitude was one. 2, I'm not naive. We were able to win the county final and advance into the playoffs because Terry Copeland came back. We didn't get Elliott back, but we added Terry. And Terry didn't play in those first 2 games against Bosco. I did feel like we were starting to turn the corner in that second game against Bosco because people that were at the game or watched it, there was 3 minutes and 49 seconds to go. And Bosco was a really good team. And 3 minutes, 49 seconds to go, and we were down 18 in that game. And we tied it with 7 seconds to go. Like at that point, I was like, we're starting to turn this around, and our effort and attitude by the head coaches and the coaches got better. And then that started to trickle down into the players. And then the other thing is, which I don't want to give my secrets away, is the biggest change is that we started reading books. And when people have asked me, like, how did you change things around? And I forgot that the primary muscle that needs to be worked is the mind. So each player on my team, had areas, including myself, the coach, had areas to grow in. So we started through reading different books. We started working on that stuff.
What books?
So there's an author named Darren Donnelly that writes these fables about sports. And I would read in classroom 5 an hour a day before practice. And it was tough for me as a coach because as a coach, you want to be on the court and you got to be working your plays and your offense and your defense and your execution and all this other stuff. And in my mind, I'm thinking, man, Kevin DeVario's up there at Bosco and they're on the court for 2 hours. And here I am, a kindergarten teacher, reading to my team for an hour in the classroom. And now I'm going to go down and I'm going to practice for an hour, which actually helped us because the hour of practice actually saved our legs. And we were really fresh at the end of this year. But Darren Donnelly was the author, and it's a bunch of fables. The main one we read was a book called, I think Like a Warrior. And in that book, there's like these 5 inner beliefs that if you have them, you really can become successful in anything you do. One of those inner beliefs was that I love what I do, and I attack each day with joy and enthusiasm. So I would have myself and my team chant this before practice, and this would be our mantra. There was another one that was that, I choose faith over fear. Because when you play Don Bosco, you play a rivalry, there's always that fear of losing. And what are people going to think when you lose? And the kids show up to school next day and their classmates are busting their chops because they lost. And you can't play with fear. And one of the things we would talk about is that, victory favors the fearless. So I had to help my kids become fearless. So those are the kind of things that we did. And then we kind of developed like this internal dialogue that we would have within our team. So I would start every practice. And they started, every practice was like, it's a great day to play a game of basketball. Meanwhile, it's like raining or snowing or freezing outside. And I love what I do. I attack each day with joy and enthusiasm. And I kept saying great things are coming our way. And then I started to realize that they started to believe it. And I knew they started to believe it because once the players start making fun of the head coach, that's when you got them. So they started busting my chops, seeing me in school like, hey, coach, great things are coming our way and all that stuff or whatever, kind of laughing about it. But we did kind of create this. I don't know if it was a Jedi mind trick that I did. I don't know if it was me brainwashing them or just me believing in rainbows and unicorns and anything's possible. It started to work. And all of a sudden, the difference between our team prior to that that county tournament final game, anybody that watched that game was like, man, this is a different team. And even though we got down 8 points in the first 4 minutes of that game, I felt the difference. Like these kids were connected. They were actually playing for each other. And they just cared about each other and they cared about their school. And they played an incredible game that day.
What are your thoughts about when like you see like how you said that your players, they have to deal with their friends the next day at school. But then for you, because I remember from being at games, you have the student sections chanting at you, like Billy's on the court, get him off the court.
Yeah.
For you, like, do you laugh about that type of stuff? I mean, do you enjoy that? Do you like going into places and sometimes being the enemy?
I guess Tom Brady kind of said it the best in like that documentary, The Man in the Arena. Like there's no other place like it. Whether you're at home, you enjoy it being at home, whether you're, you're just competitors. So I love being on the road and being in those environments and stuff. And it's just, like when you got that sold out gym and that crowd and all of a sudden you're lined up and they're playing the national anthem and you got all the butterflies and the jitters and all those kind of things. And it's something that, I loved as a player and I love it as a coach. I just can't, it's obviously when hopefully a long time from now when I retire from coaching, it'll probably be one of the main things that I miss is that feeling before the games and being in the arena. I will tell you, and a lot of people might not believe me, and my wife would actually kind of give evidence to this. It's so weird, but like once you get started and once I get going, like you're so like, you have like this Zoom focus and you're so locked into what you're doing. I have no idea what's going on in the bleachers, like it's in the stands. And I'll come home from games and my wife will be like, can you believe that? Or, did you see that cheer that our cheerleaders did? And like, that was really great. And I was like, we had cheerleaders at our game today. I didn't even know they were like, and that's not disrespectful to them.
I know what you mean.
And it's just like, you're so like in that moment, like just where it's just like working your guys to where they need to be, that everything else kind of goes away.
See, like I'm that type of coach. So we had our Super Bowl and we're on offense and the cheerleaders cheering. And I'm that coach that tells the cheerleaders to stop cheering mid-game. But no, right. That's hysterical that you say that how locked in you get in these
Yeah, I
games.
don't really hear anything, and yeah.
What's the at halftime? What are you guys really going over? Is it more of just a reset, or what happens inside that locker room at halftime in a big game like those?
The halftime is the biggest. I don't know how to explain it exactly. Like it's the halftime is really for like sports talk radio and inside the NBA. And I think one of the things that is so at least in the game of basketball is that like what are the adjustments and the adjustments? And that is the adjustments are so overrated. It's incredible. Like you watch the NCAA tournament, it's like the adjustments and the adjustments. And if you really know what you're looking at, there really aren't many. Just think about it. It's hard enough to get high school and college players to execute what you've been practicing 6 days a week for 3 months. You think you're going to go into a big game at halftime and make all these just fancy adjustments, and the kids are going to execute them beautifully? So we will talk about one or two things, like maybe we'll switch our ball screen coverage. So we've been hard showing in our pick and roll. So now we're going to switch the ball screen. Something simple, something that we've kind of worked on. Maybe we'll do something simple where it's like, all right, we're going to change the defense or something like that. So, but honestly, for us, the last part of the season, we would go in and it was really, okay, what are we doing well? The players would tell me 3 things we're doing well, because there's always doing something you're doing well, and what can we do better? And I emphasize what can we do better. And then the other part is really like, how's our effort and how's our attitude? Because those are the 2 things we have control over. So that's what our halftime looks like. It's really those 4 questions. And they'll be like, well, our effort is, it's a 4. Okay, well, what do we got to do to get it to like an 8? And then, well, how's our attitude? Well, our attitude's not great. And that's really it. And I think there's like this like mystical idea that you go into halftime and now you make these adjustments and the team comes out all fired up and they start playing. Like, I mean, I played in high school, I played college, I played 7 years professionally. I've yet to see it. I do see teams play good in the first half. They play better in the second half. Sometimes they do wake up, all of those things. But it's not necessarily because there's like these major adjustments. I do think football could be different because especially high school, you play 8 or 12 games. It's 1 game a week. Basketball, like I'm playing like 32 games. We got 3 games a week, sometimes 4. If I've got to motivate you by me losing my mind at halftime to get you to play hard, like, I mean, we got no chance. So our halftime is that. What are we doing well? What can we do better? How's our effort and how is our attitude? And then from a coaching perspective, is there 1 or 2 things that we could tweak, something simple that might help us?
When you talk about the effort and like tweaking things for adjustments inside the halftime, so you're not intense at all during halftime. When you go to practice the day after you lose a game, how long after a game is that game on your mind when you lost? Is it just that night or a couple hours, or does it sit with you for a while?
I'm getting a lot better at it. It used to sit with me for a lot longer, and then I've gotten better where it hasn't sat with me, where I really moved on quicker. During the season, you can't let it sit with you. The toughest ones are the last one of the season because that sits with you the whole year. But you can't let it sit with you because your team depends on you. Like I can't, I just can't show up to practice the next day and be all upset or whatever, And I think what happens sometimes is, and I got the quote, and I'm gonna butcher this quote by Lou Holtz. He would always say, "Don't vomit on your players," because it makes you feel better, but it makes everybody else sick. So I see it all the time in like AAU basketball, and maybe I've seen it sometimes in high school too. Like my pregame speeches are about 90 seconds. There's no rah-rah speech, My halftime speeches, you saw what it is. My postgame speeches are even less. Win, lose, or draw. It's we practice tomorrow at 2:30. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Because I'm so emotional. The players are emotional. The parents are emotional. It's an emotional thing. Now I'm going to go on and go off on some kid or go off on our team for some reason. They're already upset because we lost. And I have to go home and watch the film until I can really see what went on, And then I show up the next day and no one's in trouble. And like I've played on teams where you show up the next day and now you're in trouble and the coach is pissed off because they lost and stuff like that. I don't change. Like our routine is the same. It's my pregame, my halftime, my postgame, the way we attack things. You lose to Don Bosco, you're not in trouble. I'm not mad at you. You're not a bad kid. The formula is pretty simple. You're a human being first. You will always be a human being at Bergen Catholic basketball, and then you're a student athlete, and then you're one of my basketball players playing in a certain position or whatever. So I make mistakes every game. The refs make mistakes. The players make mistakes and stuff. So I hope my approach is a lot of people use it. My fear is that it's not what goes on, just from some of the observations I've made, where our youth sports has turned into yelling at kids. We have a philosophy when I hire you as an assistant coach. We have a no blaming, no shaming, no yelling philosophy. Doesn't mean we're not loud. Will, you got to get on the tape. Will, you sprint back. There's no yelling. There's no blaming and shaming. Like, kid, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? That's a terrible shot. We don't do that. That's, I know I didn't like it as a player. I also think it doesn't work. And some people would disagree with me. I think some coaches and some bosses, they try to use fear to get the most out of people. I don't do that. I try to develop individual relationships with our players and our coaches based in truth.
If there was one dream head coaching job, where would that be for you?
Oh, wow. It's I've never been a grass is greener guy, and I was told by a very good coach that you got to water the grass that you're standing on, otherwise it dies. So I just I wake up and it's just like I'm just so it's like that mantra, like I love what I do and I attack each day with joy and enthusiasm. I just really love coaching. And I actually thought about this today because I was watching some episodes of Ted Lasso the other night. And he made a comment in there where it was something like he loves coaching. And then it got me thinking that I feel the same way. Like, I love the game of basketball. I really love the game of basketball. It's been so good to me. I got to go to college for free. I got to play in the NCAA tournament. I got to play at Cameron Indoor Stadium twice against Duke when they were #1 in the country. The real Duke teams where the kids were there for 4 years, and Shane Battier and those guys were kicking my ass and stuff. So I love the game of basketball, but I actually love coaching more. I just love coaching. And it's as I get older, it becomes less about the X's and O's. It becomes less. I tell parents that come to Bergen Catholic, if all I do is teach your kid to put an orange ball in an orange hole, like, that's completely stupid. That would be a dumb profession. So I really just love the coaching because the coaching gives me the ability to do two things: build relationships with people and also impact people's lives. So I don't know if I'd have a dream coaching position other than I just want to have a team. I just want to have a team that I can call that's like, this is my team, and I get to work with them. And I will tell you that I'm a pretty boring guy. The only things I really like to do is coach and then spend time with my family. And my wife makes fun of me because she's like, you have no friends. You need to have more friends. Can't you go out and do something? And I just like coaching, and I just like being with my family. So wherever I coach, and being at Bergen Catholic, and hopefully it is at Bergen Catholic for a long time, my family plays a big part in that equation. So if it's not a place or a program that's built for my family, and I've been able to do that at Bergen, that's some of the real joys that my 3 kids that and my players knew this. Like, one of my goals this year is I want a picture with that Jamboree trophy on the court with my wife and 3 kids. Because back in 2019, I took a picture with the trophy at the Rothman Center with my daughter, and I keep it in my office, and it just brings me so much joy or whatever. So, and my players were just incredible because the game's over and they're cheering, and then I think they were more excited that I had the ability to get that picture taken because they knew it meant a lot to me or whatever. So, so I just want to coach, and I just want my family to be part of it.
Game day superstition?
There's no superstition. I got rid of the superstition because what I did was I talked myself out of it, because I was like, well, I only wear these shoes, I only wear this belt, I only eat this meal. And I was like, man, if it was that easy, I would definitely do it, and then I'd be undefeated as a coach. So I realized that there's no such thing as superstitions. But I am a big believer in routine. And my players are very comfortable, and I'm very comfortable in our routine. And whether we play a team in Florida, at Hal Gymnasium, or we go up to Don Bosco, the routine is exactly the same. It's why Steph Curry does his 2-ball dribbling drills before every game, because when you get to that level, it's the routine that makes you feel comfortable. It's not necessarily like Steph Curry has to do 2-ball dribbling anymore. Like, he's such a good ball handler. So the routine is really what makes me feel comfortable and makes me feel prepared. And then makes my team feel comfortable and prepared. Because at the end of the day, that's my number one goal, is that I want my team to be comfortable and confident. I don't want them looking over their shoulder at me. What do we do next, coach? And I always tell my assistant coaches, it's not what we know, it's what my team knows with no timeouts left and 4 seconds to go in the game. It's what they know. It's like I don't have a timeout to save them. So I'm trying to develop my team so that I can maybe sit at home and watch the game on a live stream with you, Phil, as opposed to actually having to go to Hal Gymnasium and coach them. Probably better for my health and as well.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, when I coached my basketball team this year, we got pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got pretty intense too.
Yeah.
Who do you have winning the finals?
So it's interesting because so people always ask me, do you fill out like an NCAA bracket? I never do, because if I did, I'd have to put Davidson College as the national champion, and it would probably blow up my bracket. So at the end of the day, like, I'll watch different games. I'm not a big hockey guy, but I watch game one with the Rangers because it's a local team and so on and so forth. So when people ask me, it's I root for Bergen Catholic, no matter what sport, no matter what they're doing. I root for Davidson College, and then I root for Steph Curry. So that's my answer.
Okay. I like it. All right.
Yep.
All right, so we're on the same page with that one. Well,
Yeah.
Coach, I ask all my guests on the show this all the time. You have any questions for me before we jump off air?
Not really. I just really appreciate you having me on and getting the opportunity to speak about coaching and speaking about Bergen Catholic basketball. I mean, I love doing it, and I'm really honored that you'd even consider having me and stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So for Coach Armstrong, I'm Phil Bacacci. We'll see you guys next time on Philosophy.